Good morning, everybody, and welcome into Coffee Break presented by Bath Fitter. We've got DMAC, Rachel V. Hill, Will Peterson, Jake Shapiro going to join us later on in the show. DMAC, last night did not go as planned at all for the Colorado Avalanche as they fall 3-1 to the Seattle Kraken. They get their first win. The Kraken get their first playoff win in their first ever playoff game. And boy, did the Avalanche lay an egg.
What happened, Rachel? What happened?
I'm shocked. I was honestly shocked. I knew it was going to be a close game. I know everyone was expecting a blowout. Will Peterson, he owes me coffee because he was saying that Avs were going to have tacos. I knew it was going to be a close game, but I still thought that the Avalanche were going to come out on top and not trail like they did by any means.
All right, here's my vibe after being in the locker room after the game, and you were there too.
Yep.
Is I think they just pressed too hard to get to the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
3 games in 4 days against the Oilers and against the Jets and against the Predators, back-to-back nights. We talked about it here on Coffee Break. Like, wow, they're going with Georgiev 2 nights in a row. Okay, and it just felt, Rachel, like too much. In addition, although they were healthy, they got a lot of guys back who haven't played together.
Mm-hmm.
And so the rhythm was off and the rust was off. It's a very hard environment to just jump into a playoff game. So
Yep.
Josh Manson was not good. And then you had a very weird thing happen right before the game because they decided to scratch Eric Johnson. Just to let everybody know, they had officially announced he was a scratch.
Yeah.
Okay? But they did decide to warm him up. And that is not unusual, Rachel. Oftentimes, they're just, they're not quite sure. They'll warm up maybe one extra guy, something like that, and then sort of make their decision. But I'm telling you, they had already announced that he was scratched, even though they had him warm up. Well, as it turned out, Jack Johnson somehow got hurt in the warm-up.
And this is really weird because you and we obviously were watching warm up. I didn't see anything unusual. I didn't see him go over to the bench. Like, there was nothing. So it was just such a weird injury. And then, yeah, we obviously find out right as the game's starting, and we're kind of like, well, what's going on even? Like, how did this even happen?
I don't know. I'll going over to practice here in about 90 minutes over at Family Sports, and we'll sniff around it. We'll see what's what. But I think they were exhausted going to the finish line. I talked to Mikko Rantanen over the weekend. He said 4 days was plenty of time to rest up. I don't think so, Rach. I think they needed another day to sleep in, maybe 2. Because look at what they had to do to win the Central, Rachel, by 1 point.
Yeah.
1 point, and then just like that, you lose home ice advantage. So there you go. I mean, you were fighting so hard to get home ice advantage, and now it's gone.
Yep.
So for a team that was so successful on the road, I do wonder why they felt like they had to press so hard to win the Central Division. So, okay, whatever. I mean, that's water under the bridge, but I think they probably did take the Kraken lightly. Mm-hmm. Bo Byram said there were distractions leading up to this. So you have Eric Johnson, scratch, a leader on that team, okay?
Yep.
Gabriel Landeskog news, which just came out last week. Exhaustion just in general, and maybe feeling themselves a little bit, Rachel. Feeling themselves, because the whole thing was about not playing the Stars or the Blues in the last 10 days. Mm-hmm. Don't want to play the Stars and Blues. Or the Stars in the Wild. Sorry, Stars in the Wild. Don't want to play the Stars in the Wild, Stars in the Wild. So by default, if you don't want to play the Stars in the Wild, anybody you do play has got to be, easier, right? Well, it so happens that's Seattle. So you got what you wanted, and then it just didn't feel like you were ready to go.
Real quick, so since Gabriel's obviously not playing, does somebody else take the captain's spot?
That's a great question. Great question. That was asked of Avs GM Chris McFarland on Saturday at Family Sports. It was between laser tag and bumper cars that we got to ask Chris McFarland a question. And he said, absolutely, positively, no. It's never been in discussion. It's just, no, it's not going to happen. He is the captain.
So then that doesn't make sense to me, because you and I yesterday, we were looking down at the bench to see if Gabe was sitting down there, and he was not. I would expect, 100%. I'm totally behind with Gabe being the captain, but I feel like your captain needs to be able to be out there on the bench, regardless.
Well, I don't
On
know.
the bench.
I don't know what the rules are. It's a good question. I'll ask about that
Yeah.
today when I'm out there. But he was there. He
Mhm.
was with the team. He was in the locker room after the game. He wasn't in a great mood after the game either. But
Wait, he
he
was?
was. What's that?
Gabe was in the locker room?
Yeah, well, what happens is they watch the game from wherever. A lot of times scratch players will watch it from the press box, but there's no seats up in the press box.
Yeah.
So he could watch it from the owner's box. He could do that, or he could just watch it from a TV in the locker room, and he and Helm and who else was scratched? I guess Jack Johnson. I mean, all the players that weren't playing that are on the team, McDermott, they're all there. They're all in suits. They're all watching the game somewhere. For a player to actually be on the bench would be, that would be highly, highly, highly unusual. I can ask him what the rules are with it, but he's there. He is there. He's there. So that means he's there before the game, during the game. He's there. He's around.
Okay, well, first of all, I didn't see him in the locker room, so I'm shocked because I was like right behind you. I see no comment.
I didn't see him either. I followed up with another Muggle, and don't forget, we missed the elevator going down because the Joe Sakic elevator that we were trying to get onto was packed. So we let Super Joe and his crew go down, and we didn't get on. But a lot of you see how it works with the Avalanche. Their media is fast.
Yeah.
Like they get off the ice. Their locker room is right behind the bench. What are we talking about? 10 feet, maybe? Yeah. It's crazy close. And everything in the NHL happens super quick.
Yeah.
So a lot of the reporters cheat it, and they kind of slide down before the end of the game. I like being up top for the end of the game, but I know the problem is getting in the elevator and going down. So we were just a little late. But many, many, many times when I've gone down earlier, you pass the suited non-playing guys in the hallway because they're in the locker room, and they literally have to pass you on the way to go get their car to leave. So in general, you do see them. Rachel, that's how late we were, that we missed that, crossing of the captain. But I did reach out this morning to check that he was there with a earlier arriving Muggle, and he was.
Okay, gotcha. Well, we will bring in Will Peterson as I answer this question. Mel says, what is Rachel talking about? Injured players out of the lineup are literally never on the bench, like ever for the last 50 years. Well, my response to that is we're talking about the captain when it comes. I know injured players typically aren't out there, but we're talking about a captain. In soccer, the captains, they switch their armband. When we're seeing captains out there for the Broncos example, they're still out there. I would love to see Gabriel Landeskog still be out there. Will Peterson, good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. I heard the last 5 minutes or so of your guys' conversation, and we should be somber today. Don't get me wrong. I wrote at denversports.com. We learned that after one game that this journey is going to be nothing like last year. The Avalanche were 16-4 last year. They were historically good. This team's just very good, quite good. Last year's team was historically good. That being said, I'm also not going to sit here and have the Avalanche's funeral after one game. No. It was a rough night at Ball Arena, but I still firmly believe they're going to win this series.
I'm 100% with you. I think, personally, I'm always like, if you're going to get slapped in the face or get a punch in the gut, get it early, get it over with, don't overlook it. But you guys, we can't forget, they were tied 3-3 with the Nashville Predators before Nathan McKinnon obviously has a huge moment to be able to advance them and give them the first place in the Central Division. So, I wasn't expecting the exact same Colorado Avalanche team that we saw last year. This is a completely different team, and I feel like we need to go into this postseason knowing there's probably going to be a lot more ups and downs than what we saw last year, Will.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, that was sort of the tone of my column was last year it was no one goes 16-4 in the playoffs. You just don't do that. You can go 16-12 and win the cup. If you win every series in 7 games, you can lose 12 of them and still be the champion of the world. So to only lose 4 games was absolutely remarkable. But I also want to look around the rest of the Western Conference. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
The Stars lost at home. The Vegas Golden Knights lost at home. The Edmonton Oilers lost at home. Guys, you realize that we're through game 1 of all 8 series, East and West. The road teams went 6-2. They're having these same conversations in every city except for Boston and Carolina. I guarantee you the road teams don't win 6 of the 8 series. So for everyone in my mentions last night saying they're done, Kraken in 5, Kraken in 6, I'm like, man, my prediction of a blowout was wrong. And I'll own that. My prediction in game 1 was wrong. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to say they're going to lose this series because almost everyone, again, except for Boston and Carolina, lost game 1 at home.
I'm waiting for my coffee,
Yeah. When's that coming? The coffee bet between the two of you.
I don't know if we ever shook on it, but
oh my goodness!
Wow!
I got the proof in the DMs before the game, or not in the DMs, in the Twitter mentions before the game even started.
Wow!
Right, we were debating. All right, I'll just go peek behind the curtain. Rachel and I were debating the line. She wanted -3.5.
And then I said, I'll give you -2.5.
And then we discussed this in our group text. Notifications on Twitter last night were jacked up.
They were.
I literally never saw that you responded with the 2.5 until like the third period. And by that point, I wasn't taking it. So, no, I won't get off on a technicality. I will get you a coffee because I said blowout. They lost 3-1. I have egg on my face with that one.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel still had them winning, but not as much. So
I thought it was going to be a close game.
So I just get her like, a small coffee. It doesn't just
get her like a venti.
Yeah, like venti mini tall, whatever they call it. I think there was a lot going on behind the scenes. Bo Byram said it after the game. He implied that there were things happening, and it's like, okay, that's interesting. Nathan McKinnon, of course, had the quote of the night when my guy Jesse asked him, what impressed you about Grubauer, and he said nothing. And then the media that was there was like kind of flabbergasted by a one-word answer, and it was near the end, and he was generous with his time for Nate. So he goes, nothing. Everybody paused, and he goes, anybody else? And like we're like, no.
Wait. So DMAC, this will actually tell you. I was clearly tired last night. When I thought he said that, I thought he said that about Georgiev.
No.
He said nothing. And so I was literally shocked. And I was like, all right, we know Nathan McKinnon. He can be a very sassy individual sometimes, which we love. We're here for the firepower, all of that. But that's what I thought it said about Georgiev. And I was like stunned. Luckily, he didn't. The team is we're still all chemistry. We got connections going in the locker room there. But I literally was like, oh my gosh. So I re-listened to it this morning and I was like, oh, wait. Okay, everything's okay, everybody.
Oh, yeah. He was, yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of reaction to that comment. People were fired up about it.
Yeah.
Like, don't give that guy any props and no big deal. I will tell you what the Kraken did well. They took out really dangerous scoring chances for the Avalanche. They clogged up lanes. He had a good look at almost all shots. There were a couple of them, JT kind of burst in, had one shot, rebound. Val followed, couldn't finish. The Avalanche didn't have many power plays that they had a couple, but they couldn't do anything with them. So listen, at the end of the day, here's what was crazy. The Kraken aren't necessarily the biggest team in the world, but for a good chunk of that game, they were pushing the Avs around. I couldn't believe it. I was surprised by that. But the Avalanche did eventually gather themselves and sort of have a little bit of a better rhythm. So, did Grubauer play great? Sure did. And you know what's funny? He didn't even play the most games of the both of the Kraken goaltenders. Mm-hmm. Jones, I think Martin Jones is the other keeper. He played 10 more games than Grubauer, and he won 10 more games than Grubauer. And although their save percentage and goals against is kind of equal, mm-hmm. but Grubauer going into the game, he had the experience of the building, and he said it did give him an advantage. His coach said it didn't give him an advantage, but Grubauer said it did. He just said he felt comfortable. He knows the lights and the angles, and he's just kind of settled there. So it is a very unique situation.
Was that something we overlooked when we were all thinking about playing the Kraken? Is the fact that,
Yes.
Grubauer literally has played so many games. I mean, 3 seasons here with the Avalanche. Of course, he's going to know this ice and this arena really well. It was just something that I personally hadn't even thought of. Will, is it something we overlooked?
Yeah, it's definitely potentially something we overlooked. I think experience and familiarity is always going to help a player feel more comfortable. There's no doubt about it. But also, I'm not going to sit here and crown Philip Grubauer because, guys, in 2021, he was great in the first 2 games against Vegas. Truly great. He was truly awful in the next 4 when the Avalanche had their worst round 2 collapse. Nathan MacKinnon infamously said, "I haven't won bleep." People were calling for Jared Bednar's job, and that almost felt like the end of the Avalanche as we knew it until obviously they went on the cup run last year. You can blame Nathan MacKinnon in that series. You can blame Cale Makar. You can blame Mikko, Gabe. You know who I blame number 1 for the Vegas series was Philip Grubauer. His goaltending sucked in those final 4 games, so we'll get bad Gruby at some point. I'm not worried about that.
Okay, yeah. Listen, he's not even all that secure with his job there in Seattle, and they have. Listen, here's what the Avs think of Grubauer. They exposed him to the expansion draft. They lost him, and then everybody in the hockey world was stunned. He got a 6-year, $34.5 million contract. People were blown away by that, and like I just mentioned, he actually played in less games than Martin Jones. I mean, it's not enough to say that he's a backup necessarily, but I mean, it's definitely split. And in fact, it leans towards Jones. But boy, oh boy, he did what he needed to do last night. That's for sure. And I think with the Kraken, they had nothing to lose, and they were loose. They talked about it after the game, how loose their pregame skate was, their morning skate, and how they went into that game. Just really nobody expected anything out of them. Let's see what happens now, okay? Let's see what happens now. Now you've got our attention. Now we're kind of focused on things. Let's see what happened now. However, although the Avs are healthy, Cogliano was out. He hasn't recovered. I don't think Manson is 100%. I know Val isn't 100%. Cale may still be bothered by some stuff. So I think healthy is a very relative term. I think they're good enough to play, but I don't think they're anywhere close to 100%.
Let's talk about Manson real quick. He struggled. And I know it's been a while since he's been back out on the ice, but how much did it play into the Avs losing? Like, if you just had to give a percentage, would you give it like 10%, or are you giving it like 30%? Well,
yeah, I think 30 is a fair number. I mean, he was involved in goals 2 and 3. He and Cale had the bad change on the second goal. And then the third goal, he looked lost, and the Kraken got a turnover. And Manson is a very good player. But that rust last night was apparent, no doubt. And that was a big reason why getting him back for a couple games in the regular season would have been nice. Cale Makar was a no-show. Getting him back a couple games of the regular season would have been nice.
Right.
Tough to ask those guys to come back game 1, round 1, and play their best when, again, Manson was responsible for 2 of the 3 goals, committed 2 penalties too. Just looked rough last night.
I think they could have got those guys back if they didn't value winning those games at the end of the season. If they really seriously treated those games more like, preseason sort of things and weren't so desperate. But you know what, guys? Then you'd have to play the Minnesota Wild, and they just won in double overtime against Dallas. So I still think the Kraken is the better team to face rather than the Stars or the Wild, or specifically the Wild. I do.
Yes.
But to think that they're a rollover team, forget it. They very well earned over 100 points this season. They don't have a lot of big superstars that you can put your finger on, but they're kind of consistent on every line. And what the Avalanche looked last night was like the Edmonton Oilers last year. One big line and a whole lot of nothing with an old goaltender. Listen, that was not Georgie's best game, okay, guys? It was not. So, and he did explain on the second goal, he said his skate got caught in the ice, and he actually kind of stumbled over to where he was trying to slide over. And, stuff happens. I mean, it's hockey. You get bad bounces. Your skate catches in the ice. You lose a blade. Your stick gets knocked away. I don't know. It's hockey. That's the way things go. So when you have an advantage, you have to take it. And you have to step on your opponent. And the Avs, I mean, they weren't even close to doing that.
Well, I bring up the Manson thing because do we think it was rust or do we still think he's not fully 100%? Because if it's rust,
I think it's both. I think he's not 100%. He's talked about it. He's given this a go. But even Jared Bednar, I mean, when your coach comes out and says you're rusty, there's not a lot of debate about it. So, I think it's a combination.
well, that's just my thing is if he's not fully healthy, why try and figure out a new lineup and bring him back in if it's not like 100% go time? Because that was the other part of this game is I don't think that they all have this chemistry because they've been dealing with so many different lineups that sometimes that can play like a big part in it, especially when you're already kind of like amped up and it's the playoffs and it's this different type of feeling. You add in another different lineup, I feel like things can get a little messy sometimes, Will.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I mean, the whole Jack Johnson, Eric Johnson thing is weird, and I know you guys talked about that at the top of the show, but would you have been better to play both Johnsons and healthy scratch Manson? Hindsight's 2020, but perhaps because Josh Manson wasn't very good last night. But I wrote it at denversports.com. They got to get Cogliano and Helm back in the lineup like soon, because they were both depth heroes last year. And D-Mac, you made a really good point. Last night it was the top line and then ghosts, right? Ben Myers, I'm sorry, he ain't doing it for me. Matt Nieto, he ain't doing it for me. Alex Newhook, can you believe they wanted that guy to be the two-line center? He does absolutely nothing. So you need to get Helm and Cogliano back in there like soon. Maybe game 2 soon, because they both had huge moments in the playoffs last year. And those 3 guys I just named, I would be comfortable scratching any of the 3 of them to get those other 3 back in the lineup.
Here's the big issue they have to deal with. This is what the Oilers had to do or decided to do. The big line for the Oilers included Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They split them. They were trying. I mean, sometimes they were rotating them together, but the way they came out was to split them up. Do you, and this sounds ridiculous because of how great they've been together, but would you move Mikko to the second line?
And Jared Bednar got asked about that too, of separating the star power. And of course, he didn't really get much of an answer. He's kind of did the whole, we'll see what would work and what doesn't work kind of thing. But Will, would you? I'm curious your answer.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I say no. I think you gave way too much money to Arturi Lehkonen and Valeri Nichushkin for them not to show up, right? You didn't pay Nazem Kadri, so you could pay Lecky and Nichushkin. Another 2 ghosts last night, in my opinion. So I think you keep McKinnon and Rantanen on that top line, and you tell Lehkonen and Nichushkin, hey, you're making a combined $20 million or whatever. You need to go play like second-line players play. Give us some production, because that second line didn't do anything last night.
I don't think they'll change up that, but here's what I wouldn't be surprised by. If they move Dennis Malgin to the top line and they try to make the second line a little bit stronger by moving Evan Rodriguez down to the second line with Comfer and Nichushkin. That would be a little bit more of a subtle change. Malgin was actually pretty successful playing on that top line for good chunks of the season. So that wouldn't surprise me.
Also, there was one thing I liked out of Matt Nieto was he wasn't afraid to kind of push people around. If you watch off of the camera, like on the ice, he was shoving quite a few people, and I appreciate that because I think they do sometimes need somebody who's going to be a little bit more aggressive, especially like that Curtis McDermott type. I appreciated that out of Matt Nieto. But my question is Nazem Kadri always going to be the ghost of the Colorado Avalanche? Like, if they don't win, are they going to say, oh, if they would have had Nazem Kadri, they would have done it? And, will that always linger over Nichushkin's head when it comes, maybe not personally, but when Avalanche fans look at it?
I mean, I don't know. I guess you can make things up if you want. I mean, the Flames didn't make the playoffs. Kadri's not a pure first-line center. His offensive numbers and goals and assists were almost identical to JT Compher. I mean, just slightly above. His contract was crippling, so you just had to make a call on an older guy like Kadri or a guy that has way more time to come than Nichushkin. That was ultimately it. And I guess it was a little bit more of a commitment to Sam Girard, too. Listen, these are tough decisions to make. I talked to Chris McFarland, the GM, about it over the weekend, and he admitted that, yeah, really hard decisions to make, and there's more to come. Also, the The real story is they wanted to give Gabriel Landeskog every single opportunity. McFarland said he deserved it to have every opportunity to return. If they thought Gabe was just done, just done at the trade deadline, I think they would have acted much differently.
Agreed. Well,
yeah, I mean, obviously, if they had known Gabe was out, they would have done some salary cap gymnastics with a long-term IR deal and added some more firepower at the trade deadline. No doubt about that. But Gabe himself said he believed the 12 weeks. He believed another month. They had to trust the player at that point. The Knicks just didn't cooperate for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. On the Kadri thing, Rachel, I think it's totally fair to question if they flame out in the first or second round if they paid the wrong people last offseason. Yeah, that's completely inbounds. Kadri was the heart and soul of this team, guys. The two biggest moments in the playoffs last year were Nazem Kadri. The racist death threats in St. Louis, and he responds with the hat trick. And then it's 2-1 in the final. They go to overtime in Game 4, and Naz is the one to finally break through, let everyone exhale, go up 3-1, as opposed to the Stanley Cup final being tied 2-2. So, yeah, I know he got a lot of money and a big contract, and he's getting older. But guess what? I don't care if that contract's an albatross in 2029. I'm trying to win the Stanley Cup in 2023. The Avs had a chance to win 2, 3, 4 Stanley Cups in the next 5 years. They still do. Don't get me wrong. They still do. But they'd have a lot better chance to do that with Nazem Kadri.
Yeah, but I mean, you give a big contract to a 34-year-old compared to whatever Val is, 27, 28.
But the question is, D-Mac, trying to win now?
What has Nichushkin done of note this year? He has not lived up to the money at all.
Nichushkin was a house on fire to start the season, and then he got hurt. He's been hurt the whole year. What can I tell you? The guy's been battling the best he can. He's been injured. That happens to guys. Listen, I don't dislike Kadri. Kadri was my favorite guy on the Avs during the Stanley Cup run, okay? I mean, his story was unbelievable. But when you look at the numbers and the age and what he got from Calgary, I mean, guys, that just was not going to happen. And you'd be insane in the membrane to take a player of his age and abilities compared to Val Nichushkin. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And here we are. We don't, for a second, you talk about heart and soul. Well, what did Darcy Kemper mean to the team last year? He wasn't part of the heart and soul, and we don't for 1 second blink at the fact they got rid of him. So,
because Georgie's a better goalie.
Yeah, okay, fine. So, I mean, what are we? You're talking about Kadri intangibles because the numbers put him at equal production with JT Compher, okay? Equal. So you're talking intangibles and leadership. That's why, and that's fair. That's fair because it does mean something. And I think Helm, Cogliano, and I think Eric Johnson is one of those guys too. But you know what? Listen, man, we're not watching the tape. We're not breaking things down like the Avalanche coaches are, okay? They are. And they just won a Stanley Cup. So if their hockey eyes are telling you we're better with Eric Johnson on the bench, fine. But from an intangible standpoint, that's rough, man. And that's what Ruff sold to everybody else in the locker room. I mean, he is one of the guys. He is the longest tenured team athlete in Colorado of any sport here in Colorado. Of any sport, he's the longest tenured athlete. So to think that, just scratching him, and I love Jack Johnson too, but let's face it, they let Jack Johnson leave and they reacquired him in a trade. He's not Eric Johnson. So we're getting into some weird, sketchy territory. And if Jack Johnson is really hurt, how ironic, guys. He got hurt skating. It's warm-ups. He got hurt skating. How does that, seriously, how does that happen?
For both of you, anytime you see a skate go up, you get a little nervous? Because obviously when we look back at the Makar, Gabriel Landeskog thing, I'm like, oh, like it wasn't even like a dirty play. Like it was just a skate going up and it caused such an injury. Now, anytime I see a skate go up close to another player, I'm like, oh gosh, like please don't let anything serious happen to any of these guys. Like that's all I can think about because you can get injured just so fast, it seems like, and it's so scary. I don't know. It's like last night I watched the skate go up like twice and every time I was like, oh gosh, somebody please get hurt.
Well, who's the dude in the Vegas
Winnipeg,
Yes, he got his face ripped off with like 75 stitches. 75 stitches.
I know.
And still plays?
He comes back out.
What do you have, a sewing machine in the locker room? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, and if you need 75 stitches, you lost enough blood, you should probably be in the hospital getting a transfusion, not on a hockey rink.
75 stitches.
I can't even imagine that. It was Morgan Barron, but you got see, I'm just like it's so bad, and like the intensity of hockey players is so cool. Like that's another part of it that makes hockey just so much fun. Like you're willing to fight or whatever. But yeah, 75 stitches, and you're like, heck yeah, it's a playoff game. Let's come back out. And then of course they just absolutely dominate the game. I'm like, good for you guys. But you guys, we talked about it a little bit at the top too. The Avalanche aren't the only like top seed to go down. There's only been actually 2 top seeds. It was Boston and then who was it? I'm sorry.
Carolina.
Thank you. Yeah, those are the only 2 higher seeds that actually won. If you think about that and you look at the bracket that is the NHL playoffs, it's going to be a wild freaking ride for the rest of the time here.
Yeah, it's the playoffs. This is what we get. So, all right. We were all guilty, myself included, of thinking the Avs were just going to breeze through this and smoke them. I still think they win the series, too. I think they get their act together against the good old Kraken. And Grubauer will probably come down to earth at some point. And we know now, of course, being on the road is just not that big of a deal in the NHL. It just isn't. It's not like baseball, basketball, and football. So, okay, calm down, everybody. Take a breath. We all have to eat a little crow today, who, myself included, about being so cocky. But I'll be interested to see the tone of practice today and see what happens moving forward. So I'm not freaked out about it. We were just wrong. It's not going to be an easy series, and they didn't blow them away. So we'll take it from there. But going on the road is just not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. It's not.
And out of the 6 series, Rachel and DMAC, I would say 1 or 2 of those will get to 2-0. That's when you start to pay attention.
Yeah.
If a team can go in and steal both games and get it to 2-0, that's when it's like, okay, we're firmly on upset alert. Obviously, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, but Game 2 becomes a must-win for the Avs. You can't go to Seattle down 2-0. We all know that. So that's where it'll get really, really curious, is out of those 6 series, inevitably a couple of them will go to 2-0, and that's when we'll truly be on upset alert.
But we can all agree that we are not giving up on the Avs. We have full faith in Jared Bednar and this team that they will correct whatever needs to be corrected. Right?
Yeah. I just wish I was I wish I was wrong about being right about how hard they were pressing things at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. They won the games and everybody's like, "Oh, well, what do you know about X, Y, and Z?" And I mean, I guess I maybe I don't know about X, Y, and Z when it comes to this stuff. I can just tell you how it felt. That's all. But I was at that game against the Jets, and they won, and then they were packing their bags up to go to Nashville. And I'm telling you guys, that wasn't a happy locker room. That was a bothered locker room. That was a locker room that was upset about getting on a stupid plane for, a game that they had to really exhaust themselves for. Mm-hmm. Guys, this race to the finish line, and it's not the finish line, it's the starting line. This is where, but we had to press so hard. You want to juxtapose that with something, look at the freewheeling Nuggets and what they were going through. I mean, that was like lollipop land last week for them, and they had a blast. They're having sleepovers and team dinners and fun practices and shooting games. And, I mean, they're the biggest problem with the Nuggets is what do you do when you're winning by too much? Like, that was actually a debatable topic amongst all of us. Malone putting Joker in when you're winning by too much. You want to talk about first world problems. There's no bigger first world problems than, why are you playing guys because you're winning so much? The Avs could only dream of having those issues right now.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Will Peterson, as always, an absolute pleasure. I will be waiting for my coffee, though. Don't worry, my friend. And I'm sure we have a lot more coffee bets to come on this playoff series. And there he goes. All right, Will Peterson. We will bring in Jake Shapiro, though, because we do want to talk a little bit about the Denver Nuggets because we got another late night tonight. Jake, good morning. How are you, my friend?
I'm trying to show you. It's hard to see on camera. The time I broke my face open playing hockey and had like 50 stitches. It's happened to almost everyone who's played hockey.
50?
Yeah, I don't remember how many because I was like 12 and I fell while I was without a helmet on. And I don't know what I hit exactly, but my entire face was gashed down here.
Okay.
And yeah, let's just say my chin didn't fully fit together with my bottom of my mouth. It was a mess. There's blood everywhere. I didn't even know. I got up and kept skating, and I go back to finish my go back to the bench,
Ugh.
and my dad, I've never seen my dad look at me. He was one of like the assistant coaches, and he's just like he had seen a horror movie, like he had seen someone murdered. He's just like hospital, hospital. I'm like, what? And then I looked down, and it was just a pool of blood.
I could never be a doctor. What you just told me already
Yeah,
disgusts me. I could never do it. Oh my gosh, Jake. I'm so.
hockey.
How old were you?
Like 10 or 12, something like that. I was pretty young.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah, I
can't.
also played a hockey game on a completely broken foot, and I knew it. I knew I broke my foot with the puck hit my skate. I knew my foot was like a ball. It was like goo. Like I knew my foot was like that. But what you can do is if you break your foot while you're playing hockey, is if you keep skating through it, it won't actually swell up until you take out your skate because they're so tight. So I knew I could keep playing, but as soon as I took the skate off, I wouldn't be able to play again for weeks or months. So I kept playing and I actually scored a couple goals.
Oh my gosh, you sound like Valentushkin over there. We knew he was
Yeah.
playing with a broken foot. D-Mac, have you ever broke a bone?
I have not. I've got a couple of concussions,
Hmm?
falling off the old bicycle. Got ripped up my meniscus and left ACL. But other than that, I've been all right. I've been pretty good on that. Um, I ran into a tree at Copper Mountain and I separated my shoulder. That I could, I still got a little. Oh, that was super scary. I was going really fast down Andy's Encore at the top of Copper Mountain, and I went to make a big sweeping turn. I was going pretty quick, and I lost the skis from out from under me, and I just fell off the side. My momentum took me off the side of the hill, and I hit. Now think about this for a second. I hit a tree with my shoulder. So think about the distance from the center of your head to your shoulder. And for whatever reason, somebody was looking out for me that particular day, and I hit my shoulder and separated my shoulder instead of hitting my head. Which no helmet, of course. This is a long time ago. No helmet. Yeah, oh yeah. Nobody wore a helmet back in the day. And so that I separated my shoulder. But you know what's funny about a separated shoulder? I didn't need surgery, and there was nothing else they could do for it. It just sort of like you just sort of live with a separated shoulder, and I live with it kind of to this day.
Oh my gosh, I've never broken a bone either. I was a swimmer growing up, so
No, that's the right sport.
yeah,
That's the right sport.
yeah, you're pretty lucky. You're nice on your joints and your bones and everything. The only thing you can really do is if you go off the diving well or go into the diving well, you can hit, and water can feel like concrete for sure sometimes.
All right, what is more gross? Jake, who with the chin and bleh, all that, or long distance running where you get bloody nipples? What is more disgusting?
I'm gonna just go with the chin.
Chin?
I've never
Right.
actually met anybody that's gotten bloody nipples before.
Oh
so
my God! You gotta just Google marathon bloody nipples. It
It
doesn't.
happens.
The
I
videos.
know
and
it
photos.
happens, but I've never personally met anybody, so Jake will take the cake for us on that one. And I'm not a runner either, so I
No,
actually
the most
love to hear.
disgusting thing is you get done with one of these races and you take a picture like, I did it. Then you see the picture back.
Ugh, gross.
That's horrible.
I could
That is
never.
awful.
All right, Jake, real quick though, fill us in because Jokic is technically listed as questionable for tonight. However, we're all assuming he'll be good to go with that right wrist sprain.
I'd be stunned. In fact, I'd bet coffee on it if Nikola Jokic does not play. He's playing in this game. He said he's fine. Nikola Jokic, several times this season, has been questionable with a right wrist sprain and has played almost every single time. Those games, of course, a lot less meaningful. He has had this injury since 2019. He has won 2 MVPs with a right wrist sprain. And this injury does impact him. It's something that impacts him, particularly shooting from deeper distances. When he first sprained his right wrist, his three-point numbers kind of tailed off in the back half of that 2019-2020 season, or it was 2020-2021, whenever it was. It was a long time ago, though. He looked like he re-aggravated the injury with 4:42 left in the second quarter when he and Karl Anthony Towns kind of collided on a shot contest. Jokic subsequently missed both free throws and then only made one shot for the rest of the game. Granted, Jokic only took a couple shots, and he doesn't shoot much when the Nuggets are winning by a lot. So it's hard to tell if this really had an impact on the way he was playing. So that's where Jokic is at. Again, I'd be stunned if Jokic does not play tonight, but he is questionable. And again, he re-aggravated an injury he's faced for a while.
I put out on Twitter a picture, a screen grab of Jokic yesterday after practice. And just to clear a couple little things up. At the end of practice, when they let all the muggles in, they weren't doing a shooting drill. They were having a shooting game. They had broken up into like foursomes, and at the various rims, they were trying to hit like the first team that would hit like 23 pointers in a row would win, and they would rotate around to the other baskets. This is just something Jokic just didn't want to participate in. He wasn't hurt. He didn't have any wrap on his right wrist. Absolutely nothing. I asked him about it directly. I mean, he could always lie to me, I suppose, but he's got no wrap on his wrist. He didn't want to play in the little game. It wasn't that he didn't want to participate or couldn't participate in the drill. He just didn't want to play in the fun game. Jokic he's I don't know how to put it, guys. He likes to have a laugh and everything, but like trivial things are just not up his alley. And little shooting games, while most people would think it's a blast and fun, and trust me, the team was hooting and hollering and loving playing the game. Jokic is just like, who needs it? So I think Jake is right. He's been dealing with this little thing. So they can put him on the injury report with this whenever they want. I think, guys, we have a little gamesmanship going on right now. That's what I think we got going on. I think we got a little something just to get in the head of the Wolves just a little bit. I think that's purely what it is.
Right. Why is Jokic on the injury report, but Jamal isn't with the right thumb?
Yep.
There you go.
Right. And why does he have no wrap, no ice, nothing when he's talking to the media? And he's talking like, he wasn't favoring his hand. It's flopping all over the place. He's fine.
D-Mac, and I want to give credit to you because you were the one who asked the question. So I want you to answer this. But you asked Malone about essentially why he put Jokic back in. And I want to know if you believe his answer and what he said.
Well, he kind of had several answers in one. So he might have been a little surprised by the question. And it's bad on us in the media that we just didn't ask him about it after the game. Okay, that is bad on the Muggles. It was an obvious thing to ask. I saw the response on social media. It was by far the most overwhelming question that, wasn't addressed. So Malone had time to think about it. He kind of stumbled out of the gate when he was trying to explain it, but he eventually landed on what I think is the truth, is that these guys just haven't played a lot together. So he just wanted them to get some run together, some chemistry. And I actually buy that. The whole concept is the game's not over. They still had their starters in. It's kind of like, so what? In fact, I asked Kentavious Caldwell-Pope about, hey, they've got to react to you, not the other way around. And he wholeheartedly agreed with that. If you want to just pull out your guys because you're up 30, you dictate what they do, not the other way around. So I think Malone did stumble on that, but I think he got to the real answer eventually, that this was his plan. He wants to get the guys some minutes together in the fourth quarter. So it was more like he was sticking to his plan than anything else. But then our guy, Zach Bai, has the ultimate conspiracy theory that it's personal. And, if you're up by 30, you could be up by 40 if you put Jokic in. Well, Jokic wasn't having any of this, and he took 2 quick fouls. And as Jake astutely pointed out, it's the first time he fouled out since 2019. Yeah. So it's pretty damn clear Jokic didn't want to be in the game. And then Malone challenged the 6th foul? Why? So we had some weird things
Did you catch what Jokic was doing during that challenge?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so one of the photographers got pictures of Jokic with his arm around the ref, who called the 6th foul that ejected him. And Jokic is asking him what the foul was and thanking him for the explanation of the foul while it's being challenged by Malone.
Yeah, it was, Rachel. Listen, you don't plan on being up by 30 with 8 minutes to go in the game. You just don't plan for it. So things got a little bizarrely off kilter, and Malone was kind of sticking to what his plan was in the first place. I understand why you could perceive it as being personal. I don't think it is. I think that's too petty for a playoff game. I think these games mean way too much for these guys. I think it's just more of the plan was to get these guys minutes together in the fourth quarter, and Malone just sort of wanted to see it through. Before he had put Jokic back in when they were up by 30, he was like waving at the guys who were in the game to like, go, like move, like up the court. So, and that is consistent with what he's done in the regular season when they've had big leads. He has said it many times. We're playing that fourth quarter like it's 0-0 because we want to teach lessons of how we want to play, on a more consistent basis. We don't want to let up. We don't ever want to be complacent. Mm-hmm. But there's been other games, too, where he's just taking the guys out because there's no need to play them, and the game's over. So I don't think we should be surprised in an important game that they were trying to stick to their plan. Mm-hmm. So I'm with Malone all in all. I get it. However, that being said, you got to be a little smarter than that because any injury that would have happened to any starter at that point, holy cow. I mean, I can't even imagine if something like that happens.
Yep, and that's kind of my point of Malone kind of walked into his answer, so it makes you really question what were you actually thinking in that moment. Obviously, the Timberwolves are going to have a better look at the Nuggets now that Game 1 is over. We look ahead to Game 2. Jake, what are you expecting to see out of the Timberwolves that maybe they may not have done on Sunday night?
What's going to be interesting is the adjustment to the adjustment. And what I mean by that is the Timberwolves came out and ran this spread two-sided pick and roll where they were tossing it between both their guards at the top, and Kyle Anderson is a short roller. And this actually worked at the end of the first quarter and early into the second quarter, and it's why they took a little bit of a lead. The Nuggets called a timeout, Malone made an adjustment, and the Timberwolves essentially didn't score from that point forward. So what's the Timberwolves adjustment to the Nuggets adjustment going to be? And that's what the playoffs is. It's just a bunch of evolving adjustments. It's chess. But I will give you this. DMAC, all year long, what have we said is the magic number for the Nuggets at home?
120.
120. They would probably score 120 points if their starters stayed in the last 3 minutes of the game, 4 minutes of the game. Okay? Let's just say the Nuggets won that game with their starters 120 to like 77, something like that. So how are the Timberwolves going to go from 77 points of when the Nuggets were trying to 120? Mind you, the Nuggets were without maybe their most important defender in this series for the entire first half, essentially, in Aaron Gordon because he was in foul trouble. So I just do not see a way the Timberwolves are going to flip the script to that extent. What we also have not talked about from that game is the Nuggets offense wasn't really even that great. It was good, but in the first half, they were rusty. They were still trying to get it together. So my biggest questions are, can the Nuggets repeat in terms of energy and intensity? What's the Timberwolves adjustment going to be? How Karl Anthony Towns going to be a lot better than he was in game 1, but what extent does he show up in? Can the Nuggets absolutely own the rebounding again? But like we're talking about 7, 8 things need to be flipped and go right in the Timberwolves direction, even for them to get close to where the Nuggets were in game 1. So I'm not expecting another 30-point blowout. That's historic, but I'm expecting the Nuggets to roll. I think the spread on this was like 8 or something. That seems right to me, and the Nuggets should be able to pull this one away. It should be a lot closer into the fourth quarter, but I'm not worried about where the Nuggets are going into this one.
Yeah, in a whole lot of games, Jokic goes back in the game. They're up around 10 or so with about 7 minutes to play, and that lead usually stretches to 12 to 15. I think that's more or less where they're going to be tonight. I think Jokic will probably get a triple-double. I think he'll be a little quicker to try to score. And, yeah, the Nuggets actually didn't shoot very well. They really didn't. Can you imagine if they were actually shooting what they could normally shoot? But I'll give credit to KCP, man. Not only is his primary role as a defender, but boy, oh boy, when he hits a couple of 3-pointers, that just lifts the team like you can't believe. So if KCP gets 3 3-pointers, Michael Porter Jr. gets his typical 4 or 5, Aaron Gordon maybe gets 1 or 2, and Nikola Jokic goes for a triple-double, all within the realm of possibility, we're probably talking about a 20-point win if all those things that are very, very possible happen to a team. I don't know what the answers the Wolves have. I think the only thing that the Wolves can do against the Nuggets is, frankly, guys, the Nuggets just beat themselves. If they shoot poorly and they let even then, I don't even know what the Wolves do. Because I don't know. Frankly, I do not know how the Nuggets lose to the Wolves at home, period. And maybe the road, there's something else going on. Road teams always have a problem in the NBA. It's not like the NHL.
Yep.
But seriously, guys, how the hell do the Wolves actually beat the Nuggets in Denver? I don't see a path.
Their margin for error is very thin, D-Mac. You're correct.
I agree. No, 100%. And I actually came across a stat this morning where the 80 points that the Timberwolves have scored, that's the fewest points they've scored since the 2016-2017. Why are you pointing?
I told you that on Sunday night.
Did you really?
Yes.
When you need to point like that way, not at me.
This way?
That's yeah.
Wait, that
but
you told me a lot of stats though, Jake. You are like a stat maniac. So I'm sorry I missed that one, but I stumbled across it this morning and I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah, and the Nuggets the Nuggets have only, I'm trying to phrase this correct. The last time the Nuggets let up the opposing team score 80 or fewer points, it happened once in the regular season like 2 years ago, but it was actually against the Jazz in Game 7 against Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert in the bubble. So this was a historic defensive and offensive inept performance from the Timberwolves. And to answer your question, D-Mac, is think about this. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, no All-Stars. In fact, Nikola Jokic is the only All-Star the Nuggets have. The Timberwolves have 4 All-Stars.
Ridiculous.
Conley's a former All-Star. We got Anthony Edwards, who was a first-time All-Star, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. The answer is they've got a lot of talent on that team. Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley run a very efficient pick and roll that just happens to not be that efficient against the Nuggets. They found a way to beat it over the years. Anthony Edwards needs to get a little bit more involved in the pick and roll. I don't know how much he can offer that team. Kyle Anderson can be a lot better than he was in Game 1. Like, there's a lot of things that can go right for the Timberwolves, but ultimately they're missing 2 things. Their best defender, who punched a wall last week, Jaden McDaniels, and their backup center, who is a starting level center on any team in the NBA, Naz Reid. And those are the 2 guys that would have been able to flip this matchup for the Timberwolves a little bit into, I don't want to say their favor, but into the realm of possibility. But you are right, D-Mac. I would be stunned if the Nuggets lost a home game to the T-Wolves. Now, will they drop one on the road? Maybe, whatever. They're not losing at home.
They would have to have Anthony Edwards have a Donovan Mitchell, Dame Lillard, kind of, I'm talking ridiculous, like 46, like a 46-point night, that Donovan Mitchell and Lillard can do, or Kyrie Irving could do. And I don't know, it's not that he can't score. Of course, he's an all-star. He's a great player, movie star as well, the villain, Tawancho. But I just don't see it happening. And I saw a very interesting YouTube clip, and it broke down some really big, it was like 6 minutes of defensive stops and rotations the Nuggets did. Listen, man, they didn't just miss those shots on their own. There was a lot of great defense. And don't forget, they said they knew what plays we were running. And KCP said, yeah, we did know what plays they were running, because they came in when they came, back into practice on Saturday, and the coaches had it all broken down. Mm-hmm. The coaches had spent the night watching the game. They got up early in the morning. They figured it all out. You got to give a tip your cap to the coaching staff of the Nuggets for getting those guys prepared. They did know all the plays. Not that they were cheating. It's because of through hard work. And they did have a great week of practice, and they weren't pressing. Mm-hmm. And forget about that Rockets games and the Spurs games. Those games now just absolutely positively don't matter. So they don't have to live with the exhaustion hangover the Avalanche did going into Game 1. They're riding high, man, and you got 2 days to rest. this is going to be another. God, I don't know. I just have no idea, frankly, how they don't win by 20 tonight.
Mhm.
Never mind 8. I mean, I think it's going to be another. I don't know 29,
Rachel,
but 20.
can
Don't
you
be
take
surprised.
that clip right there where DMAC credits the coaching staff and just tweet it at James Marilat? And I'll add in, I'll give Michael Malone an A. Like, they were so well prepared. Their
Mhm.
rotations were on point. All that week of preparation, all that rest and relaxation worked perfectly. He pushed all the right buttons, Rachel. He did.
Yeah, like Rachel, if I win the lottery, the $100 million lottery, and somebody is criticizing me for buying a $30 million house, that's the equivalent of the criticism of Malone putting Jokic back in the game. Shouldn't have bought that $30 million house. You should have just bought that $20 million house. I mean, that's what criticizing Malone about Jokic is all about.
Here's the thing, though, too. It's not just the coaching staff. Aaron Gordon is taking 3-point shots at practice yesterday because he was getting left open. It's the players, too. We just got to honestly give a lot of credit to everybody because they're not getting complacent. They understand what's at hand. And I honestly, like, it's championship or bust, and we've talked about it a ton, and I honestly believe these players also believe that, and you can see it in the preparation they're doing on the practice days. You can see it with the coaching staff going in and figuring out what plays the other team is going to run. I am expecting I'm going to go 20-point lead with you, DMAC. I don't think it's going to be 30. I don't think we're going to see an absolute just dominant performance, but I'm going to go 20 with you tonight again, and I think it's going to be an easy win for the Nuggets.
Hey, real quick, I put this in my story, but I didn't tell this to you guys Sunday because there was a lot of people around, and I was the only one who caught it while I was in the locker room. Walking past Aaron Gordon, and he's saying under his breath, 15 more. 15 more.
Hell yeah, it is. Let's go.
And let me tell you about Aaron Gordon, too, because he's one of my favorite guys, as long as you bring him up. I've seen him do that shooting routine, Rachel, time and time again. And it maybe is upwards of 200. Are you ready for that? 200 3-pointers at the end of practice.
Yep.
And listen, it's great to have like 4 coaches helping you put up shots. But he'll go around from a variety, maybe like 5 different spots, and put up like 20 shots per and keep going back around. It's no joke watching these guys, how hard they work. And I caught Aaron Gordon a little accidentally, but while everybody else was wrapping up practice and done for the day, he was down on the court, the real court, taking free throws, okay? So my man Aaron Gordon is awesome. I love that dude. I love his game. And these guys are not on cruise control. If anybody thinks, oh, I don't know if they really want to win and where's their commitment, forget that. These guys all want to win.
Yep.
KCP has a championship pedigree. He's spreading that knowledge and information. They all want to win bad, okay? Mm-hmm. And they proved it. So I don't want to hear any other naysayers question the desire of the Nuggets. That's a bunch of bunk. A championship is all they're thinking about right now.
All right.
So I talked about Aaron on defense. On offense, think about this. Jeff Green scored 0 points. He was in that game for Aaron. The way the Timberwolves were covering him, as DMAC and you mentioned, they were not covering him. They were letting Aaron shoot, which means they were doing the exact same thing to Jeff Green. Jeff Green, at this point in his career, is not as good of a shooter and not as good of a floor spacer. So imagine Aaron in that game spacing the floor for the entire Nuggets offense and knocking down those 3-pointers. I'm telling you, if Aaron doesn't get in foul trouble, that could have been a 50-point Nuggets win.
Well, people in the comments are saying, Alessandro says Nuggets win by 10. I saw win by 10 or less. 15 more, I like it. Double OT Nuggets by 1. Oh, man, that would be crazy. I hope not, everybody. It's an 8 p.m. Mountain Time start tonight. We definitely need no OTs. Just get her done. Move on to Minnesota. But I like the comments. We see them coming. We appreciate you guys every single day hanging out with us. We're going to be back tomorrow morning. We're going to be talking about the Nuggets game. And then we got an Avalanche game again tomorrow night. So you're going to be seeing a lot of Avs and Nuggets coverage here. And, of course, we keep you up to date with the Broncos, the Rockies, whatever else is coming on. Jake, real quick, what's going on with the Rockies? Because I know somebody is back in the lineup. Who is it? Daniel Bard?
Daniel Bard is back from a 2-week bout with anxiety.
Yep.
Might have been longer, but he was on the injured list with anxiety. Great to see Bard back. He's their closer. Sadly for the Rockies, they haven't had many save opportunities here and likely won't here for a while. They've lost 7 in a row, which is more games than they've won this season, their current losing streak. Things are really bad. They're off to their worst start ever. And then another sneaky thing to watch, which I have not written about yet, is their starting third baseman Montero, who was the big piece back in the Nolan Arenado trade, has through 18 games been one of the worst players in Major League Baseball. And he got benched last night for his defense on Monday night. And again, he's on the bench today. So it seems like he's on the verge of being sent down. That happens sometimes with young players. They come back and they're all right. But Montero cannot hit and he cannot field currently, which is very, very bad.
Okay, yeah. Rockies, we know they stink, but there's always something positive you can find out there. Give DMAC a follow on Twitter. Jake, thank you so much for hanging out with us for a little bit. Will Peterson, too. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back 10:30 tomorrow morning for another episode of Coffee Break. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. Get your coffee ready because it's going to be another late light. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.